Hello, everyone, and thank you for staying with me through this series. And welcome you again to our rural development series. Today, we'll be talking about the meaning of rural development and the goals of rural development. At the end of today's session, our expectation is that every student should be able to discuss the definition of rural development, explain the goals of rural development, enumerate and discuss the goals of rural development, as well as discuss rural development processes in Nigeria. Okay, now rural development is a concept that has been viewed from different perspectives. If you've been with me through the series, you must have heard some of the perspective from which we view rural development. Now, perhaps this is because of the peculiarity of the problem rural development tends to address, all right, in different rural communities. We will be giving a broader understanding of the concept in terms of its various definition as well as the goals of rural development generally. Okay, so by definition, we have defined it before, but let's define it again. At least that will help us catch up with what we are supposed to be talking about today. Rural development can be viewed as the development of morals, social, political, economic, and potentialities of rural communities to enhance their self-reliance through the provision of appropriate infrastructure such as pipe-borne water, electricity, good road, small scale industry, increase in political consciousness and participation, as well as promote their moral and social well-being, which will result in tolerance, good discipline, justice, fairness, kindness, love, peace, and so on. This definition was postulated by Nwobi in 2007. Another definition by Okoye was describes rural development as the process of making life more satisfying and fulfilling for millions of people who live in rural areas. Rural development provides rural dwellers with opportunities for gainful employment as well as expansion of social services, which could enhance the welfare and security of the people. From this definition, you will understand that rural development is not an act, it's a process. So, stuffs are put in place to bring about a change, to bring about either a change in morals, bring about development in socials, in political, economic, and even personal life of the rural dwellers. Okay. Now, another definition by Lele. Lele defines rural development as the improvement of the population living in the rural area on a self-sustaining basis through transforming the social partial structure of their productive activity. Now, from these definitions that has just been highlighted, that of Mobi, that of Ukoye, that of Lele, we could pick out three important features of rural development. One, the first is that improving the living standard of the subsistent population, which involves the mobilization and allocation of resources so as to reach a desirable balance over time between the welfare and productive services available to the rural subsistence population is one feature that comes out from these definitions. Then another feature is that mass participation, which requires that resources be allocated to low income regions and classes, and that the productive services actually reach each person, is another feature that can be seen or highlighted from these definitions given. The third feature that can be highlighted is making the process. You'll see that in those definitions, you'll notice that there is an emphasis on making the process self-sustaining, requiring development of appropriate skills and implementing capacity and the presence of institutions at the local, regional, or national level to ensure effective additional financial and human resource for continued development of this subsistence sector. This can be in quote referred to as sustainability, sustenance when these things are implemented of the rural development process. in rural population. So these three are the things that have been features that are highlighted from this definition we just gave. All right, these three things. Deductions could be made. Deduction made from all the definitions and concepts of rural development may include that rural development should be a sustained increase in total transformation and modernization of the socio-economic environment of the rural environment. All right. So we have other deductions. Another one is that it is a process. We've mentioned that before. We also have another deduction that rural development, it is an integrated approach to food production, provision of physical, social, and institutional infrastructure with an ultimate aim of bringing about qualitative changes which culminate in improved standard of living of the people. Another that can be deducted again is that rural development is systematic and an integrated process designed to improve the socio-economic and cultural life of rural dwellers that are characterized by peasant and subsistence agriculture. We also deduce that it is an effort to improve the living standard of farmers and the rural populace. These things tend to repeat themselves, but by repetition, points are established. So let's keep repeating them till you get it established. Okay, now what are the goals of rural development? One, generation of new employment. Two, more equitable access to arable land. Three, widespread improvement of healthcare services. Four, nutrition and housing provision for the people. Five, broadened opportunities for all individuals to realize their full potentials through education. Six, a strong voice for all rural people in shaping their decisions and actions that affect their life. Now, from these mentioned goals, we'll notice that the goals are long-range goals, but they provide the guidelines for short-range actions. So, by these goals, by looking at these goals now, or if you want to run by these goals, they trigger short-term actions on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis, on a quarterly, fortnight basis for achievement of rural development, and by and large in its largest form by framing the rural development strategy for a particular place. Now, let's highlight or let's discuss a bit what rural development process in Nigeria is. Many African countries, including Nigeria, have attempted to develop their rural areas through different approaches and or practices which are usually determined by the interpretation given to rural development by the different actors or interventionists at each point. In Nigeria, the various traditional approaches in use are classified according to Akali's write-up in 1997 as one, rural-urban interaction; two, intersectoral or zonal coordination; three, the packaged approach to rural development. Let's just describe them a bit so that you get a better understanding. Let's start with the rural urban interaction. This is the process, or this process focuses on planning of rural development along with or within the framework of overall national development plan. That means you try to integrate rural development into the framework of the national development plan. Sometime in the past, in the 70s, we used to have national development plan that stretched between five years. Each 5 years, there's a national development plan. Every strategy, every development planning is fitted into such a development plan. So once rural development is factored in like this, we'll call it the rural-urban interaction. In this particular kind of process, provision for rural development is integrated in the overall agricultural development agenda, both in the local government, the state, and the federal government or the national, as the case may be. Now, the second one is the intersectoral or the zonal coordination approach. This process involves the coordination of hitherto isolated sectoral and zonal development programs. You gather these programs that have existed before. They try to coordinate them. The coordination of these programs is what makes up this zonal coordination approach. This approach assumes that all sectors or zones or zonal rural development programs are well conceived. All right, and then effective coordination will make them attain their objectives or goals. So, under this particular kind of arrangement, uh, the programs have been so narrow, and sometimes they fail to consider restructuring of social, economic, and political systems in the process. Now, the third one is the packaged approach. The packaged approach, this in this process, is founded on the diffusionist theory and of development, in which innovations developed outside an environment is taken into the rural area, or implemented upon the rural dwellers by presumed altruistic and change agents. Now, virtually all rural development programs in the country adopted this model. The approach you want to use, the innovation you want to use, has been developed somewhere, and then it is brought and implemented in the rural environment. We can have, for example, we have the Operation Feed the Nation. It's a program packaged and then implemented in rural area. National Accelerated Food Production Program, NAFPP, the Agricultural Development Program. These are all programs that have been packaged and then tried to implement in the rural area. All right, we have talked about the definition of rural development today. We've explained the lessons derived from these definitions, deductions derived from these definitions, and we also talked about the goals of rural development, as well as rural development processes in Nigeria. All right, thank you for listening, as I look forward to seeing you in my subsequent classes.